The Knicks head coaching search is reportedly down to 3 candidates: Jerry Stackhouse, Mark Jackson, and David Fizdale. Now, over the course of the last few days, you have heard other names. You've heard the names of former Knicks coaches, Jeff Van Gundy, even though there have been conflicting reports as far as whether the Knicks even want Jeff Van Gundy. You've heard the name of Mike Woodson, that the Knicks reached out to get permission to speak to him. You've heard the name of David Blatt, who has a relationship with Steve Mills going back to their days at Princeton. It's an interesting conversation because over the course of the last 5 to 7 days, the narrative has gone from, wow, the Knicks are being patient, taking their time, and really expanding their range of options. They're being open-minded about this process. They're being, picky. They're being patient, and they seem to be in no rush to hire the right guy. Again, I go back to the conversation of the press conference that Mills and Scott Perry had after firing Jeff Hornacek, and right there and then, appearances do matter to a certain extent. For as long as I've been a Knicks fan, for as long as many of you listening have been fans of the Knicks, you're not used to them doing things in a quote-unquote professional manner. And the way that they conducted themselves in that press conference, again, you could say all the right things, you can win the press conference, but at the end of the day, it's all talk. So yeah, you do take it with a grain of salt, but that is a grain of salt worth taking. Because we're not accustomed to the Knicks handling their business in a way where you say to yourself, I'm confident that this Knicks organization is in the right hands. We haven't had that in quite some time. So right off the bat, from the moment that the plane landed in New York after their 2017-2018 season concluded in Cleveland, they made the move right away. They acted swiftly, and they dismissed Jeff Hornacek. They did the right thing. And the next day addressed the media in the right manner. And the initial foray, as far as their coaching search, they've done it in an appropriate manner. They've done the right things. They've kept an open mind. They've put out the right message as far as them being patient in terms of drilling down to the right candidate. They mention how they want someone who's going to come in and bring about a culture of accountability, someone who's going to be able to bring about a defensive identity, a defensive culture within this team. So they said all the right things, and it seems as if the direction of the coaching search is along the right tenor. So let's start with some of the candidates who likely are not going to be finalists for the job. Take someone like Jeff Van Gundy. Again, conflicting reports as far as whether the team even wants him or not. Jeff Van Gundy harkens back, to the glory days of the Knicks. Jeff Van Gundy will forever have a very special place in the hearts of Knicks fans. And it seems as if whenever this conversation comes about, as far as who the next Knicks head coach is going to be, Jeff Van Gundy's name is always going to be in the conversation. He is the last coach to bring the Knicks to an NBA Finals appearance back in 1999. And you remember the way that team played. That was a fluid team. That was a fun-to-watch team, and they played some defense. That team had Jeff Van Gundy's fingerprints all over it, and we miss that. We crave that. We crave a team that has an on-court direction. We crave a team that plays a consistent style. We crave a team that plays an exciting brand of basketball like we saw in the late 90s with the likes of Allen Houston and Latrell Sprewell. So whenever we think of Jeff Van Gundy, we think back to those days. Now, whether or not Jeff Van Gundy can bottle that all up and bring that back, in today's NBA, I don't know. I mean, he is coaching right now. He's coaching like a junior Team USA. I think that consists of college players and D-League players. But look, whether or not Jeff Van Gundy is even a serious candidate for this job, it goes without saying. He's always going to have a special place in the hearts of Knicks fans. And I mean, even 5 years down the road, if whoever they hire now doesn't work out, we'll be saying his name again. Mike Woodson is an interesting one because Mike Woodson, if you think back to when he took over for Mike D'Antoni, that Knicks team did a 180 defensively. I mean, it went from being, laughable under Mike D'Antoni, who we know is not somebody who really emphasizes defensive principles. He's an offensive-minded coach. He, in many ways, revolutionized the modern NBA offense like we see today. But really not much of an emphasis on the defensive end. But under Mike Woodson, you saw a team in the Knicks that had a new commitment to defense. And you remember, I'll try to pull up the stats, but the Knicks were ranking during his stretch. Remember, they went on an 18-6 run, and I remember specifically watching a game, and I have a picture of this somewhere. It was a screen grab of the Knicks' defensive rankings during that 18-6 stretch in the the 2011 season, and the Knicks were in the top 5 for almost every major defensive category under Mike Woodson. And then, of course, Mike Woodson presiding over their 54-win season in 2012, where they went to the second round of the playoffs. It was after that where you look at, the job that Mike Woodson did and the situation he was in, and eventually what transpired of him being dumped by Phil Jackson. You remember back then when the Knicks, again, we're talking about a team that struggled for 2 years after their 54-win season. And who was the finger pointed to? It was pointed to Mike Woodson that he switches too much on defense. He switches too much on defense. He switches too much on defense. It was almost as annoying as how people keep pointing to the triangle offense. That, all the woes of the world with the Knicks over the last 3 years was because of the triangle. The triangle, triangle, triangle. We wouldn't be talking about the triangle if this team won. When the Knicks were winning under Mike Woodson, you didn't hear off that term switching at all. Because if it works, it looks good, you're not going to talk about it. If it doesn't work and people are talking about it, if the media is driving home a point, then everybody else is going to grab that point and continue to hammer it home. That, Mike Woodson, he switches too much. Okay, for 80% of the people, I'm not talking about the educated basketball fan, 80% of everybody else who just says, Mike Woodson, he switches too much. Do you even know what a switch is? Do you even know what a switch would look like? I mean, if a team were to literally have a clinic on how to switch, would you even know what you're looking at? So I don't put much stock into that. Mike Woodson, good, solid, defensive-minded coach, and reportedly said that he would love the job because he wants to come back and finish what he started. He's not going to be a finalist, but it's an intriguing name and it's an intriguing conversation because it shows that Scott Perry is not leaving any stone unturned. He's looking at all his options, including a guy who coached here just a few years ago. So, again, it shows that Scott Perry and Steve Mills are looking at this coaching search with a real open mind and a real clear perspective. David Blatt, another interesting name, because David Blatt has been on the radar of a lot of NBA teams for quite some time now. World-renowned as a tactician, as a real innovative offensive mind. Coaching in Europe, a top coach in Europe. He just won the European Championship. What happened between him and LeBron, we will never know. Whatever happened eventually led to his dismissal. And that's not conjecture. That's not, me taking a stab in the air. That's reality. Because if you're coaching a LeBron James team and all of a sudden you mysteriously either are dismissed or mysteriously resign, it's not because you weren't enjoying the experience of coaching the greatest player on the face of the earth. It's because things weren't working out with the greatest player on planet Earth. If things were working out like it did with Eric Spoelstra's job is safe. Your job is safe. But if you're not on the same page as LeBron, you see what happens. And with David Blatt, guess what you want to guess, but if your theory is that it didn't mesh between David Blatt and LeBron James, then that's a great place to start. David Blatt, from what you've seen, is a great offensive mind, is someone who is a great tactician, somebody who can, again, it sounds kind of corny, but a coach that can draw up a great timeout play. He is someone that out of a timeout, you'll see the team and it'll look organized. There's a direction on the play. And I think that is something that is underrated. And it is something that is the sign of a good coach. I just don't think he is a finalist for this job, but I think you will see him back in the NBA at some point. You can't hold against him what happened in Cleveland, because coaching LeBron is such a unique situation that, I mean, again, it's tough to measure against, a typical situation like David Fizdale, who I'll get to in a second. Like with David Fizdale having a reported falling out with Marc Gasol, that's different, right? Because in every team, if you don't get along with the head coach, there's going to be an issue. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cost you your job, but there's going to be an issue. When you're coaching LeBron James, if LeBron James is not on the same page with you, guess what? Your job is in jeopardy, and it's probably not going to last very long. But I don't think that's something you can necessarily hold against David Blatt. I mean, again, keep in mind, he did coach LeBron and the Cavaliers to an NBA Finals appearance. Now, granted, they didn't win, and you could very easily say, well, I could have coached LeBron and the Cavs to an NBA Finals appearance. Look, an NBA Finals appearance is something you can't take away from someone. You can't take away from a coach. You can't take away from players. You remember when Erik Spoelstra was the head coach of the Big Three in Miami, and everybody was losing their minds that how could they hand over the keys to a Ferrari to this inexperienced coach who graduated from being a video coordinator in Erik Spoelstra? That Pat Riley should be the guy to coach the Big Three: LeBron, Wade, Bosh. That's the guy that, knows how to handle superstars. That's the guy who knows how to handle dynastic teams. He should be the one coaching, LeBron and the Big Three and the Heat. Obviously, it worked out with Erik Spoelstra. He showed his worth, showed that he's a very capable coach, a very smart coach, and that he could handle these big personalities. But if for a second you don't think that LeBron and Erik Spoelstra at some points butted heads, you're crazy. You don't get to the highest level of basketball or the highest level of professional sports in general by not having a Mount Everest-sized ego. You don't get there by being timid. LeBron James doesn't come into the league and, if Erik Spoelstra is telling him, LeBron, I don't want to see that out of you. If you're not hustling, I'm going to sit you. You're going to sit the second quarter of this game, and LeBron's going to be like, hey, sorry, oh, shucks, sorry there, Coach Spoelstra. I'll be better. No. It doesn't work that way. LeBron has an ego. Erik Spoelstra probably has an ego. Pat Riley has an ego. Every top coach in the NBA has an ego. Every top player in the NBA has an ego. Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson combined on a dynastic run. What are you going to tell me? That they all held hands and sang Kumbaya at all times? No. Of course they argued. Of course they fought. But look, if you want to chalk it up to today's society and how, the first sign of trouble, the first thing to do is to split, or the first thing to do is, all right, let's bring about a change at this position because we can't fire LeBron, so let's fire the coach. But that kind of brings me to my next point with David Fizdale, because David Fizdale, speaking of the Big Three, he was the longtime assistant to Erik Spoelstra and the Miami Heat. And look, LeBron and Dwayne Wade love him. Can't say enough good things about him. And, I mean, look, let's not get carried away. If David Fizdale becomes the head coach of the Knicks, the next phone call isn't going to be to LeBron like, hey, buddy, you want to come join me in New York, right? We got the Empire State Building, we got the Statue of Liberty, now we got me. It's not going to work that way. David Fizdale is someone who has been highly regarded for many, many years as a top assistant, as someone who, one day is going to be a great head coach in this league. And it looked like that was going to be the case when he was a coach of Memphis, coaching a very young Memphis Grizzlies team. But again, believe what you want to believe. Reports are that he didn't get it. He didn't get along with Marc Gasol. Now I don't know what could have gone so south so quickly that he would have gotten such an early dismissal from Memphis. And again, it's Marc Gasol. Yes, he's your star, but this is not, when we're talking about the top 6, top 8 of the NBA, Marc Gasol is not in that class, that he has that much clout, that he has that much pull, that much sway, that, if Marc Gasol is not happy, all of a sudden a hotshot young head coach, his job is in jeopardy. But David Fizdale is someone to keep an eye on because this is someone that comes highly, highly regarded, has recommendations from the elite of the NBA, legendary players, top coaches. Eric Spoelstra the other night saying how he hopes he gets a head coach job in the Western Conference because he does want to see him multiple times during the course of a year. So, again, obviously, if your buddy's up for a head coaching job, you're going to say the right things. But, again, he comes in with a great reputation, but you have to examine what went wrong in Memphis. Why did it, go south so quickly that it goes from him having a disagreement with Marc Gasol to being on the unemployed line, just like that. Mark Jackson, who in my last podcast I talked about, would be my pick. And I only say that because he fits, in my opinion, what this team is and what they're looking to do and what they're looking to become. What do I mean by that? And he fits what it is that they need. When he took over in Golden State, look, it's very easy to say in hindsight, well, again, anyone could have coached that Golden State team with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. My 88-year-old grandmother could have done that. Easy to say that. Easy to say that now, right? When the house is built and you look at the house and it looks all great and pretty, very easy to say that you could have built that. But what Mark Jackson was able to instill in Golden State was what the Knicks are looking for. And that is a defensive identity, a culture of accountability, and the ability to take young, raw talent and mold it into champions, mold it into winners, to have them, thinking like a champion, thinking like a winner. And that's something that Golden State, it took them time to develop. Steve Kerr took over a team that was ready-made and ready to go to that next level, to that championship level. I'm not saying that Mark Jackson couldn't have taken them to that championship level, but again, circumstances dictated such that Steve Kerr would be that guy to guide them to that next step. I don't think anybody questions Mark Jackson's basketball acumen. It's what you hear that took place off the court, reports, rumblings, whatever you want to call it, that eventually led to Mark Jackson's dismissal. Now, there was a report, I guess there was a book that's coming out that detailed what went on in Golden State, what went on behind the scenes, and it really has a lot of damning details about Mark Jackson and what went on there. I mean, we're talking about allegations of extortion from a mistress. Look, when the whole thing with Richard Collins took place, him coming out and Mark Jackson saying, I guess, something to the effect of how he'll pray for him. And obviously that caused a firestorm, especially in a city like San Francisco, which is, one of the most progressive in the nation. You knew that was going to be an issue. And again, be it in San Francisco, be it anywhere in the country, be it anywhere in the world, if you say something, if you fart in Mongolia, the world's going to know about it 30 seconds later. That's just the way that the speed of information works now. But as a basketball mind, you can't argue what Mark Jackson accomplished with Golden State and what Mark Jackson could bring to the Knicks. I try not to get into the whole, he understands New York, he's a New Yorker, he was a former Knick, he played at St. John. I really don't try to get too into that because, at the end of the day, that can only go so far, right? If he's in a heated practice with Kristaps Porzingis and, he's trying to drill down some instructions with Porzingis, what does it matter that, he's a former Knick or former St. John's, I guess, Redmond at the time, or that he's, from New York City. It doesn't matter. Because in that moment, you're the head coach of a team and you're trying to instruct, a young, budding superstar to take his game to the next level. You're not, what are you going to talk with a New York accent or something like that? I mean, I know it's a comfort narrative. It's a feel-good story. It's one where, okay, if the Knicks hire Mark Jackson, obviously that whole press conference is going to be like almost like a, homecoming of sorts. But the red flags are there, and they are worth examining. Now, look, they are worth examining, but if you're going to base a decision wholly upon, somebody's moral beliefs, somebody's personal life, then, again, you may as well just have the Pope be your coach and hope that he has some basketball acumen of any sort. That you'll have the Pope hold a clipboard and, maybe he could draw up a good play here and there. Because you have to determine what is the criteria for a head coach. Are you looking for somebody who can come in and be a guy who's going to be able to take your young players to the next level? Or are you looking for somebody who's going to be able to take the Knicks from a team that's going to be fighting it out for the 8 or 7 spot to a team that's consistently going to be fighting for the Eastern Conference title? Because if that's what you're looking for, then those are the determining factors that you have to look for in a coach. Yes, obviously, if a coach is saying things that are, considered offensive, yeah, that's not right. I don't condone that. But, if we're going to look at every NBA coach's, NBA player's personal life and are really going to examine it that deeply, then you're going to find a lot more skeletons. And, I know, like in sports, like I forget who said it, but they said something to the effect of, like, if Mussolini could play right field or whatever like that, or if Mussolini had a cannon for an arm, he'd be playing right field for me. So you're always going to hear stuff like that. But, look, maybe I'm very naive, and maybe I give people the benefit of the doubt way too much, but if you're Mark Jackson, and you're eagerly trying to get back into the NBA, only he really knows what mistakes he made, what was said to him when he was dismissed. If you're eagerly trying to get back as an NBA head coach, you don't think he's going to learn from his mistakes? You don't think he's going to learn from his lessons? I know we live in a society now where if you make one mistake, if you say one wrong thing, that forever you're going to be typecast as the guy or girl who said that, who did that. But again, if we're looking at it from that prism, then, again, good luck. Then just, hire the nicest guy or nicest girl, right, as your head coach and call it a day. But if we're going to be finding a coach that you believe is going to be able to take Kristaps Porzingis into becoming an MVP candidate consistently, that somebody who's going to take Trey Burke and, unleash his raw talent, and somebody who's really tried to get on the right path as becoming an NBA player. Somebody who's going to take someone like a Damian Dotson, a second-round pick, and make him a viable NBA role player. If you're looking for somebody who's going to be able to take Frank Ntilikina and turn him into, someone who's going to make Phil Jackson look like a genius for drafting him at number 8, then those are the things that you want to look for in a head coach. Not, 6 years ago he said this, or, he's pretty open about his religious beliefs, yet he has a mistress. Again, if we really want to go down that path, then we're having the wrong conversation. Jerry Stackhouse. Jerry Stackhouse is extremely intriguing. I'm saying interesting or intriguing or from almost all these candidates, and that's a good thing. I don't know if I think the best thing that I can say about this coaching search, because you never know what's going to happen, right? If Steve Kerr coached the Knicks, you think he'd be having that level of success with the Knicks as he's having with the Golden State Warriors? Obviously, we don't know. When Derek Fisher was hired as the Knicks coach, I remember there was a level of excitement, right? Because you knew who Derek Fisher was. You knew that he was, at one point, the president of the Players Association, so he obviously had a great relationship with the players. Very well spoken, maximized his talents at the point guard position. So you thought to yourself, man, we kind of missed out on Steve Kerr, but I think we did pretty well with Derek Fisher. It didn't work out. Whatever you want to say the circumstances were behind it, surrounding it. whether it was his reluctance to run the offense, the triangle offense or whatever. Bottom line is it didn't work out. So, look, there is no guarantee that someone like a Jerry Stackhouse is going to work out either, but he's an intriguing candidate because unlike someone like a Derek Fisher, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing against Derek Fisher because there are a lot of coaches who go from, playing straight into being a head coach without taking that in between of either being an assistant coach or, coaching in the D League. I mean, look at Patrick Ewing. How many years did he serve as an assistant coach? I mean, that man paid his dues. Obviously now, head coach at Georgetown. But can you imagine if he didn't get that job? If he didn't accept the head coaching job at Georgetown, Patrick Ewing will be smack in the middle of this conversation right now, and you know that. But Jerry Stackhouse is interesting because, he's done very well as head coach of the Toronto 905, the D-League team of the Toronto Raptors. And the bench players on the Raptors, players that have come up from the, their D-League team, can't say enough good things about him in the sense that he's made them NBA ready. He's gotten them prepared how to play the NBA game, how to utilize their skill set to be an NBA player, how to have the mindset of an NBA player. You're hearing all the right things. You're hearing how, he takes such a systematic approach to coaching, to his relationships with the players, to how, he goes about planning a game plan, to how he, structures all his practices. Everything about him is so methodical. So, again, we've seen this in different sports. We've seen this in football. We've seen this in basketball, where you have that young, smart, shrewd coach with the analytical approach, with, just seems to have it all figured out, right? Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Remember when the Jets hired Eric Mangini? Those are the same things that they were saying about him. That this is the next Bill Belichick. This is Belichick Jr. Didn't work out. Coaching, just like drafting a player, it's an inexact science. But if you're reading and hearing what's being said about Jerry Stackhouse, if you're a Knicks fan, you have to be very excited at the prospect of having someone like a Jerry Stackhouse. Here's why, someone like a Jerry Stackhouse would work for the Knicks. Look, you figure Kristaps Porzingis, your best player, is not going to be back at the very least till after the All-Star break next year, if at all next season. I mean, look, if the Knicks are, just forever games out of it, and they might be, staring down the barrel of a prime lottery pick again, does it serve any benefit to trot Kristaps Porzingis out there? I mean, look, the benefit obviously would be, all right, hey, 2019 free agents, look at Kristaps Porzingis and look at what it is that he can do. He's all better. He's all healed up. Come sign with us. But the point is, you're going to have a team that's going to probably be young and inexperienced next year, and we'll see what the Knicks decide to do with Kyle O'Quinn. If that relationship is going to further into next year. You don't know if Enes Kanter is going to opt in. You don't know what the Knicks are going to do with Courtney Lee. You figure that this is going to be a young team going into next year. They're going to struggle. And, maybe a situation like that with a Jerry Stackhouse, a first-year head coach, someone who's going to be able to grow with this team, someone who might be able to work with a fresh slate, with a young team, with an inexperienced team, and be able to put his thumbprint on this team. So, again, I look at Mark Jackson from a basketball perspective as the top pick, but I look at Jerry Stackhouse and I say to myself, that is an intriguing candidate. That is someone that if the Knicks don't sign him, if the Knicks don't hire him, and he goes on to become a great head coach elsewhere, that might be one that you're kicking yourself about for years and years to come. But it's going to be intriguing to see who the Knicks now continue to talk to, what names continue to surface, if indeed the final three are going to be Fizdale, Jackson, and Stackhouse, if there are going to be any other candidates that emerge. If Steve Clifford, a former Knick assistant, if that name emerges as well, who knows? If someone like San Antonio assistant coach Becky Hammond emerges as well. I mean, again, the Knicks have shown that they are open-minded in this process and they want to be patient in the process. So what you see is not necessarily what you're going to get, But if you're a Knicks fan, any of the names that are being presented right now, or at the very least any of the 3 finalists, I think you'll be happy with any one of them. What do you think? Who do you think out of this crop should be the next head coach of the Knicks? We'll have more on this and a lot more as we approach the offseason, as we approach the draft. Again, the website is coming soon, knickfm.com.